Hello again and welcome back to part 2 of On the Line. I'm Christine Williams. We're now talking about overcoming obstacles. Now you're going to be meeting some incredible people here, 2 individuals, both of them are overcoming gang and street life. One of them has actually had sex abuse in his life. The other lived on the streets. My goodness, wait until you hear their stories. Glenn Allen, he's a speaker and broadcaster, and Dr. Anthony Hutchinson is the executive director of the Brampton Neighborhood Resource Center. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Pleasure.
Now, I have incredible respect for the 2 of you. For people who go through difficult times, the 2 of you understand this. There's a lot of emotional pain, a lot of history, but the 2 of you, despite the obstacles, despite what people may have told you, and both of you have joined me before, you've told me what people said, you're going to be right back there in the gang life again, despite how small you feel sometimes in life as a result of circumstances, still, you overcame the obstacles. You defied the odds. You got over it, as the world phrases it, and you're here today deemed successful men in society. I'm going to start with you first, Dr. Hutchinson, with your story. How did you start out?
Well, you know, I mean, I look at it as 8 years growing up without a father and a single mom with the pressures of the world on her shoulders, and constant reminding of that's what we were in. And then the next 8 years with, you know, my stepfather using me as a punching bag, and then doing inappropriate things with my sister. And so the first 16 years were rough, so by the time I was old enough to fight back, the easiest way to fight back was from the back, from holding a gun, I guess. And you know, when you have a gun in your hand, you know, kids used to call me retarded as I was growing up. The school system had labeled me retarded when I was in grade 1. But when, you know, the first time I pointed a gun at somebody, nobody called me retarded anymore. You know, I remember coming into a conflict with my stepfather just shy of my 16th birthday, you know, and I told him, come on, you want to hit me? But, you know, and I think that led me down a path that was very, very quick. I was, you know, arrested shortly thereafter, you know, and then of course I had my first lived failure after failure after failure throughout my life. But then when I had it was a Christian youth worker and actually believe a gay high school teacher came together and supported me to excel in school and put my life back on track just as a person. The youth worker actually was a professional musician and showed me how I could, you know, exchange my gun for a guitar, and the school teacher showed me how to channel my anger from lashing out at people to this agitprop where we used structured kind of graffiti to make signs and project, you know, so we did things of quotes of Che Guevara, quotes of Martin Luther King and Gandhi, and I said, wow, these guys, man, look at the injustice they've gone through all their lives, you know, and when I learned about that, I realized that there was hope for me.
But you went through a phase where you went back. You started out, you went to school, and then you went back again. And your friends at the time, who were also in the street life, said to you, oh, you'll never make it. You're going to come right back with us. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I had a lot of supports through grade 12, especially with Mr. Lepkin and Brian Turco. And I got so gung-ho about the success I had in high school. When I went to first-year university, I didn't realize that without all those supports, I would just fall right back on my face, because, you know, I'd gotten so accustomed to having support. So that's why I think mentorship and leadership are so vital.
So important.
And so when I ended up in university, I kind of fell flat on my face. Mr. Lepkin wanted me to go to Simon Fraser, which is a smaller university and much more intimate back at that time, and said I wanted to go big and go to the UBC, but it didn't really work out very well. And so, you know, I moved to Toronto and just to kind of get away, and because I felt like I'd failed everybody around me, failed Mr. Lepkin, failed those people, and before you know it, I just went back to what I knew. I was just back out on the streets, because you know, you return back to maybe what you know best, and that's really what I had known for the first 16 years of my life. So even though I had this taste of success for about a couple of years, in the end of grade 11 to grade 12, I ended up going back to what had dominated my life from before.
And yet, the story doesn't end there. Glenn, I want you to start telling yours, because you are very familiar with some similarities to what Dr. Hutchinson described, and you went through your own private disaster when you were younger as well. Can you tell us some of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one that starts out with, you know, first 7 years of my life being relatively normal, whatever normal is. And at about 7, 8 years old, I was sexually abused for the first time by someone outside of our home. And that person later became a hockey coach and a baseball coach. So the abuse continued over an 8-year period, not for 8 years, but over an 8-year period, until I was 15. And when I was 7, I told. Nobody did anything. And so at a young age, my words, they went unvalidated. All I knew inside of me was I was angry, I was afraid, I was mad, I felt horrible, I felt guilty, I felt shame. And there was other things going on in my life within our home, not sexual abuse, but it's a big family, and every family has some sort of dysfunction. And as a child, I was never diagnosed ADD. Actually, I wasn't diagnosed until later on in life. So really, as a young person growing up with really post-traumatic stress disorder, being ADD, and having some dysfunctions of the family. I mean, it was a loving family. I don't want to paint a wrong picture. But the dysfunction, I was more sensitive to because of what was going on in my life. And I really felt lost. I struggled in school, which, as I look back on it today, I understand why. My 4 sisters were very good in school. I wasn't. I couldn't retain things. Even today, I'm still visual. When I do television, I don't wear an earpiece because it distracts me, and I can't do that. I tried to, growing up, why aren't you like your sisters? The teachers would say, you're nothing like them. You think? So, as a young person growing up, where I excelled was the same place. Really, I was being abused. Was at the arena.
Sports.
So it was kind of a catch-22, and really I felt I couldn't say anything. I already told, so now what else am I going to do? And as a young person, now some people might say, well, why wouldn't you say so? Why wouldn't you come out and charge the person? Why wouldn't you do this? I did when I was about 28, 29 years old. And our little tiny hometown of Stony Creek, they re-victimized all the victims. It was our fault. It was our fault. It couldn't have been him. He's such a great guy, and he volunteers, and
Devastating psychologically.
And a clique that was that to this day, those same people still are in denial about really what happened.
Glenn, we're going to have to go for a break, but you found yourself in a horrible, horrible spiral to the point where you practically hit rock bottom, and then you came out of it. We'll be talking after this. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our program. We're talking about overcoming obstacles, and boy, you're hearing some difficult ones. You're in the middle of telling your story that you were abused. Some people didn't believe you. I can't imagine how difficult this is. Not only were you abused, but basically people call you a liar when they don't believe you. What did this do to you, Glenn?
Well, I mean, it's for me, I had a hard time, as most young people would. You don't know what to do. I mean, I look back on it in hindsight now, and it's, my words went unvalidated, and I didn't know how to, I stuffed everything down. So, for people out there, anyone who's gone through what we've gone through, that if you stuff it, eventually it comes out in other ways. And at 15, I started drinking alcohol, and I tell kids in the school today when I speak in the schools, and I never really liked the taste of it, but I loved how it made me feel. It numbed me.
Were you addicted, Glenn?
Yeah,
I was. Addicted?
Yeah, I by the time I was 19, I was drinking alcoholically, and by the time I hit my early 20s, I was an alcoholic. And the choices I was making were, I was very self-destructive. I was stabbed and almost died in 1987 outside of a bar.
My goodness.
And even after that, even though I came so close to death, once I realized I was going to be okay, I became invincible again. And that power that I was searching for all my life, thinking that I had to be this so-called tough guy, or I had to have this persona, I turned to cocaine. And 9 years of hell on earth, of hurting myself, hurting other people, to the point when I was 33 years old, after there was some different suicide attempts, but they weren't as, I was definite at 33 when I booked myself into a hotel room in 1998. I booked in on a Friday, and I wasn't coming out Monday alive. I was coming out in a body bag. I so lost the will to live. I hated me, and one thing you said at the beginning of the show, I heard all the time, you have to get over it. I hate that saying, because you have to work through it. Anyone who says you need to get over something doesn't know what they're talking about. You have to work through things. You don't get over something, you work through it. And finally, when I hit that bottom, I ended up in detox for 11 days, a treatment center for 6 weeks, and 5.5 months in a recovery house. And I actually had people in my life that gave a damn. These people in these centers, they cared, and they began to ask questions.
The two of you talk about this. People that cared about you, and they began to ask questions. What do you tell the person out there that says, look, I can't find anybody to care about me? How do you go from there? Yes, the two of you had to reach a point where you had to make a decision and make the choice, I have to work through this. What do you tell the person? Because even today, the two of you are dealing with people that are regarded as hopeless in life.
I think one thing too, when you're looking at wanting somebody to help you, you're all of a sudden you're putting your hands of trust in people, and for me that's
hard.
And that's
hard
remarkable.
for the two of you.
That's a remarkable thing. Like,
for both of you.
Like
Trust.
how can you? Yeah, like once you've had your trust completely violated by people, right? For those who were supposed to care for you and take care of you, and then you actually go to doctors. Like I even to this day, I don't trust social workers. I don't trust doctors. I don't trust clinicians. You know, and when youth come to me, I tell them, don't trust me. Trust is something to be earned. You know, I was dealing with a young girl the other day who's going through all kinds of stuff. You know, her sister is in the sex trades, and she's trying to get pulled into the sex trades by her sister's pimp, right? And so when she comes to meet me as a man, I'm like, no, you know, don't trust me. And furthermore, all the people who want to help you, you think they're weird, right? So again, there's, you know, and so I especially working with the gang kids that I work with, right? One of the first things that I do is my mode of intervention is really to do nothing. It's just to be there and let them observe me.
We're going to have to continue after this. Stay tuned. Hello again, and welcome back to our conversation. We're talking about overcoming obstacles. And boy, you've heard some whoppers here when it comes to circumstances. The two of you, my goodness. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Glenn, when it comes to the trust issue as well. You talked about that a lot, Dr. Hutchinson. Something else I want to mention before this show finishes. You went to university and you eventually became a PhD. Now, the interesting thing was, for people who say they can't afford it, you basically ate out of the garbage can, lived in the university hallway. I mean,
I was the high-tech homeless student. I had a laptop and a cell phone, but I was living in the student building on the couch, and that's how I got by because my OSAP didn't cover enough for accommodations. They covered my books and my tuition, and so I really had no other supports, right? And you know, and I used to see the other kids just eating from the food, and they would take a perfectly good hamburger, take one bite, and just throw it in the garbage.
To the two of you, it comes across like you have a will of iron. What do you say to that? You had to have that choice. You took it up and you did it. How do you answer that?
There comes a time, for me, I mean, the rubber had to hit the road. There's, like I said, I got stabbed in 1987. My family was hoping that was the bottom that was going to wake me up. The bottom wouldn't come for another 10 years. And when I hit that bottom, that was the one that came up and whooped me right in the butt. And that was the one that got my attention. And that was the one that I decided that I wanted to change. If somebody doesn't want to change, you can send them and pay $50,000 to send them to a wonderful, beautiful place. If you don't want it, it won't work.
You
if
must
you want it,
want to change.
You have to want it. And you know what? The biggest part for me is I wanted it, and I became humble, honest, open-minded, and willing. I became, and with that, I had to find the trust. I had to find that trust, and for me, the trust came through my faith. My faith in God and Jesus Christ, that was huge for me. And it was totally a 180 too, because I wasn't a religious person, and I'm still not a religious person, but I have that relationship, and that's where my serenity comes from. And that's where I think a lot of my character and my integrity comes from today, because I finally trusted, and I trusted God. I trusted God to put people in my path, and I was also blessed with something called discernment. And that was, I don't have blind trust today. You know, there's some people who come along and they're this, that, and the other thing, they have titles, and that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to me. Okay, you can own this building, I don't care. It's what you do and how you conduct yourself, and hopefully people view me the same way. And like Anthony was saying, you know, it's not blind trust, but over time you earn trust as you earn respect. And I hope that people do that with me, because that's how I look at people today. And I do let people pass this today. I do let them in closer. And that's probably the biggest and probably the most joyous part of recovery, is that I do get to enjoy people today.
We're down to less than a minute, but I must ask this question point blank. Is there hope for everyone? who's watching, for
think
everyone.
A lot of things are based on decisions and choices that you're going to make. And you know, as we talk about addiction, Glenn's an expert on, let's say, understanding addictions. Well, you know, I refocused addiction to school. Like, if you know, I became addicted to reading, addicted to writing. I channeled, just like that teacher taught me to refocus my anger in positive ways. It's refocusing. I mean, I know so many street kids who can take apart a car, hot wire it, put it out on the street, and you know, go for a drive.
What a skill.
Well, they would make the greatest mechanics. Sometimes what we got to do is just take the skill and rechannel it, and that's what I did.
Glenn, final words?
You know, there's always hope, even in the most darkest hours. Just think of Anthony and me, if that helps you get through, to know that our lives were a chocolate mess at one time. And today, you know, for me, 9 years later, I have the life that I have today. And it's you have to put into in order to get out of, but it's worth it.
Well, the two of you are absolutely incredible. Congratulations, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
See you again in our next program. I'm Christine Williams, and from all of us, thank you for watching.